Good evening, I'm Katerina Georgieva. Here's what's making news right now.
Today, after careful consideration, we're ready to confirm that the situation is no longer an emergency. Therefore, the federal government will be ending the use of the Emergencies Act.
The illegal blockade that happened just over a week ago in Windsor has caused significant damage to Windsor's economy, in fact to the region's economy, to our country's economy. It had an impact on businesses, on workers.
I think there's vaccines that have helped in the past, but this is all new to us, so it's just approach with caution from my point of view.
Thanks for joining us. The federal government is revoking the Emergencies Act. The Prime Minister announced the move late this afternoon, 10 days after he made history by invoking it. And Ontario's Premier has also announced the end of the province's state of emergency. CBC's Karina Roman has the details.
The federal government will be ending the use of the Emergencies Act.
The government continues to argue if it weren't for the measures invoked under the Emergencies Act, the coordinated expulsion of the protesters from Ottawa, the towing of massive rigs and trucks, the choking off of millions of dollars supporting the convoy, the reopening of important trade routes would not have been possible.
The barricades and occupations got implanted to a level that we felt last Monday that we needed to give time-limited, proportional, reasonable, charter-compliant, extra tools to our authorities.
Trudeau says while the emergency is over, the threat is not. There are still groups of trucks at encampments in rural Ottawa and chatter on social media of more protests and blockades. But the Prime Minister says he's been reassured law enforcement can handle it now.
The existing tools that police forces have across the country will be sufficient to deal with further disruptions.
Trudeau argues the right to protest remains, but that does not include holding a city hostage or jeopardizing international trade relations.
We're fighting a virus, not each other.
Bank accounts frozen under the Act are now being unfrozen, but crimes committed while the Act was invoked will still be prosecuted. A parliamentary committee will review the use of the Act, and a full inquiry will begin within a couple of months to look at all the circumstances that led to this historic moment. Karina Roman, CBC News, Ottawa.
The federal transportation minister was in Windsor and Essex County this week, saying he wanted a first-hand look at how people were affected by the bridge blockade. CBC's Chris Ensing reports.
Touring a custom manufacturing shop, federal transportation minister Omar Al-Gabra heard about the financial pains of the Ambassador Bridge blockade, a point pushed home during a meeting with Windsor's mayor earlier this week, the minister promising help but waiting on a formal request.
He's waiting to assemble those costs, and then we'll have a discussion about what can the federal government do.
There have been questions raised about the response at the bridge, an event one city councillor says no level of government had planned for. A blockade on municipal streets blocking an international bridge on what was once a provincial road.
There are certainly operational lessons that I think all of us have gotten insight because of what we went through. The briefings that we got from our law enforcement agencies that they're certainly a lot more prepared. So we continue to monitor the threat and the risk of those threats, and we work with our law enforcement agencies to ensure that they don't happen again.
He defended the use of the Emergencies Act, now revoked, the blockade gone. Al-Gabra says it's time to consider what powered the blockade. People frustrated with the federal government, they say, doesn't listen.
You know, there are all kinds of people who were sympathetic to the blockades. There are a group of people who are frustrated with the pandemic and public health measures. And we need to really maintain a much more rigorous dialogue with Canadians who are frustrated and to validate their feelings, but also to continue to explain that we remain in a pandemic and we remain in a public health crisis that needs all of us together to protect each other and to protect our loved ones. And clearly there's need for more and more of these conversations. There are another group of people that unfortunately have been feeding on misinformation or disinformation that is out there. They believe in conspiracy theories. They lost faith in institutions, and that we need to have a national conversation about what do we need to do.
As for the bridge, not blocked, just backed up. A relative return to normal. Chris Ensing, CBC News, Windsor.
Local health leaders and family physicians are continuing to push parents to get their young kids vaccinated. Rates among those between the ages of 5 and 11 are low and fall below the provincial average. And as the local health unit held another vaccine clinic inside an elementary school today in the hopes of reaching more children, some parents remain unsure. The CBC's Jason Vio has more.
Only 23% of kids ages 5 through 11 in Windsor, Essex have received 2 doses of a COVID vaccine. Across Ontario, that number is 26%. In an effort to perhaps reach more children, a vaccine clinic at Essex Public School this afternoon and 2 more elementary schools tomorrow. But for vaccinated parents like Crystal Anger, she's still holding off on getting that same shot for her kids.
I just wanted to see the reactions in the kids over time. I mean, to vaccinate myself is my personal choice. I'm not an anti-vaxxer. They have their other vaccines, but it's a newer vaccine. And if I have to be responsible for somebody else and what happens, I want to be a little cautious about it. So.
For weeks, the local health unit has been urging parents to get their young kids vaccinated. Earlier this month, local school boards sent out a survey to parents asking about their children's vaccination status and why they may be hesitant. The Windsor-Essex County Health Unit hasn't publicly shared those results, and they weren't available for an interview today. But one family physician, who's also the chief of staff for Hotel Dugrace Healthcare, says these rates for kids would go up if family doctors could administer the shots.
I think we'll get a much better uptake because, again, I think they just need that trusted voice. We've already given them 13 vaccines as family docs before they turn 5. So, they already trust us to give the vaccines, and we've had those conversations with parents.
Even as hospitalizations trend down and restrictions ease up, Steen still says she believes young kids should get vaccinated.
Most kids will do fine getting COVID, but there are some kids that do get very sick. I still think if we want this pandemic to be where we all want it to be, finished behind us, we need to try and get the vaccination numbers to the highest level that we possibly can.
But countries such as Sweden disagree, saying right now they believe the benefits of the vaccine for kids ages 5 through 11 don't outweigh the risks.
So it's hard for me to understand this risk-benefit analysis that they've done in places like Sweden, because we really haven't seen the kids getting sick from the vaccine.
Even with that, parent Crystal Anger says it will be hard to sway parents, especially with COVID waning.
I'm not saying I don't trust science, I do, but this is all new to us, so it's just approach with caution from my point of view.
Jason Vio, CBC News, Windsor.
Quebec elementary and high school students will no longer be required to wear masks in class when they return from March break. A number of other provinces are also dropping mask requirements. Chris Glover is looking at whether students and parents in Ontario are ready to do the same.
Masks have been mandatory in classrooms for so long, some kids don't know anything but.
Does it ever bother you wearing your mask in the classroom all day?
No.
Nope. Happy to do it?
Well, it's not regular.
And Nonid's dad isn't ready to lose masks yet.
I think having the mask for another 2-3 months, so that will at least save us.
Quebec just announced elementary and high school students will not have to wear masks in class following March break. The province's health minister says the change is possible due to the improving COVID situation and high vaccination rate.
It's not like Quebec has been great at managing COVID, so I don't know if they should be like that. I don't think we should be taking our lead from them.
In Toronto, many people we spoke to today say Ontario isn't ready.
It's just best to just be safe, and it's not that big of a hindrance, honestly.
I would suggest they use masks because for the safety of the kids.
In Saskatchewan schools, masks are optional as of March 1st. Alberta already dropped its in-school mask mandate February 14th. Some argue masks disrupt the learning environment.
I have a child who's in JK, and she is choosing not to go to school because she doesn't like wearing a mask all of the time. It's just uncomfortable and annoying.
Brampton's mayor points to the stat that 50% of children 5 to 11 have already received the first COVID vaccine.
I believe Ontario should strongly look at this. The province has experienced very strong vaccination rates, and it certainly sets up an environment where we can make these moves to get back to normal.
Today, we asked Toronto's top doctor if students should go maskless here, but she didn't answer the question.
For now, though, I would suggest that we take a gradual and phased approach to this, rolling back of measures, keeping in mind the actual situation on the ground.
Ontario's health minister's office would only point to this clip from the chief medical officer last week.
We'll be reviewing masking in public on the 2nd to 3rd week of March and make decisions for all public spaces, including schools, in that time frame.
Dr. Moore said when Ontario ultimately does drop that school mask mandate, it'll still be recommended.
I'd prefer she still attend and wear a mask. How do you feel about that?
I think I would definitely want to still wear a mask.
But that's a decision she won't have to make for a few more weeks. Chris Glover, CBC News, Toronto.
And we wanted to hear from local students on this as well. So we went to Catholic Central High School to ask kids, should masks stay or should they go?
Personally, I'm thinking against it. I just don't think it'd be a good idea because things aren't getting necessarily any better, in my opinion. Okay. That's about all I have to say on the matter.
To be honest, not really, because I feel like most people would just go anywhere without a mask. They can be sick and they wouldn't even know, and they'll just infect other people. I think we should take off the masks when we're all ready, when COVID is not as bad, or yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea moving the mask around school because mask is so hard to breathe on it. I guess we should move the mask.
Meanwhile, our region has lost another life to COVID-19. The local health unit confirmed this latest death, a woman in her 90s. And currently, 34 people are in hospital with the virus, and 8 of them are in the ICU. Now to international news and the increasingly tense situation in Ukraine. The Ukrainian government is urging its citizens to leave Russia amid fears of, quote, escalating Russian aggression. Ukraine has also declared a state of emergency and called up reservists between the ages of 18 and 60. In Lviv, authorities tested an alarm system. Ukrainians there and elsewhere are bracing for an all-out conflict with Russia. Hopes for a diplomatic resolution to the crisis seem remote. Western countries have accused Russia of crossing a red line when its troops moved across the border into eastern Ukraine yesterday. Rising costs and rising prices have come down to the crunch in Canadian supermarkets. Snack food titan FritoLay says it needs a bigger bite, but grocery giant Loblaws says it doesn't want to dip any deeper into consumers' pockets. And the dispute is getting chippy. CBC's Alison Northcott rips this story open.
Shoppers at this Loblaws in North Vancouver aren't keen to pay more, even for chips.
With milk and everything else going up, people want to have reasonable priced junk food.
I can live without the chips to be.
The grocery giant Loblaws is locked in a dispute over prices with FritoLay, the maker of Doritos, Cheetos, and Lay's chips.
Loblaws did not want to accept the price increase that FritoLay had put forth to them. And so you're starting to see the consequences of that with very empty aisles.
FritoLay says it's adjusting its prices to offset what it calls unprecedented pressures from rising costs of items including ingredients, packaging, and transportation.
If you walk down that snack aisle, a majority of that shelf space is going to be Frito-Lay's shelf space.
And that gives the company some leverage as it tries to raise its prices.
They will have to come to some mutual agreement because I cannot see Loblaws saying to Frito-Lay, we will not stock your product.
Loblaws CFO talked about dealing with price hikes from vendors in a recent earnings conference call.
Our team uses a thorough process to vet pricing requests. We work hard to negotiate those increases down so that we offer our customers the best value.
But when that doesn't work, the company says this can lead to difficult conversations and, in extreme cases, suppliers don't ship us products. And it's about more than just chips. The Retail Council of Canada says it's fielded many calls from retailers facing major price increases for many products. in a statement saying in many cases the increases are unprecedented and far exceed typical food inflation levels. But the industry group representing FritoLay says manufacturers are just trying to recoup costs from inflation and supply chain problems. Experts say while shoppers can buy their chips elsewhere, there will likely be more disputes to come as more companies try to raise prices. Alison Northcott, CBC News, Montreal.
Potholes. They are up there as one of the things people love to complain about. And given the conditions of some of Windsor's roadways, there's ample reason to complain. Local streets have more ruts, dips, and damage than usual. Mike Evans found out why.
We go through this every year. Some years are worse than others. This year's proving to be one of the worst than others years. In the last 3 weeks, we've had some pretty large temperature swings between, plus 10 degrees Celsius to minus 10 in a 24-hour period, followed by a big snowfall. And the combination of all those three events has opened up a lot of potholes across the city.
How exactly are potholes created?
So when water is able to penetrate the road via a crack or what have you, when the water freezes, it causes the pavement to expand. And when it melts, that expansion is now left as a gap and a piece of the road will pop out. As that continually happens over time, the hole can get bigger and bigger and necessitates a patch job.
Yesterday I noticed there was water in all the potholes. It would be impossible to patch it when there was water in it, right?
Well, we do use cold mix at this time of year, and that cold mix is meant for this type of season. The idea behind cold mix is it displaces the water out of the hole and sits in the bottom, and that way you don't have the water just sitting in there as well.
So you do have crews out right now repairing potholes?
Yes, we do. Since the snow stopped on Saturday, we've had crews out since then. We run a 24-hour shift rotation during the week, so they'll be out there patching all day and all night.
Have you been getting a lot of calls into the office of residents telling you that there's potholes?
Yes, we have had many calls. We do appreciate them because it helps us to get out there quicker to know exactly where they're at. But it's pretty obvious when you drive around that there is quite a few potholes at this time of year, and we are out there getting them. And we try to start with some of the busier roads first, and then we'll get into the lower speed roads after that.
Is it kind of a never-ending cycle, or at some point do you get caught up from all the potholes that emerge over the winter into the spring?
Once the warmer weather comes and the freeze-thaw cycle stops, we're able to kind of catch up on there because the potholes stop forming essentially they'll still form, but not quite as quickly.
Let's take a live look outside there at that Ambassador Bridge, flowing. A slight chance of flurries tonight, and then a mix of sun and cloud tomorrow, and then more snow tomorrow night as well. Colette will be here right after the break. She will give us a full weather breakdown. Stay with us. It was a cold and windy day today at Windsor's riverfront, so let's take a look at some images of that. There's still plenty of ice flowing down the Detroit River, and the sun was shining for most of the day, making it a little bit more bearable if you were outside despite the cold. So this is a good time to bring in Colette Kennedy because it looks like the roller coaster of Windsor weather is going to continue. We've got a weather advisory in effect. So what's coming our way, Colette?
Yeah, so much going on as another system is approaching, and sometimes it feels like that whole, the roller coaster is over a course of a week, and sometimes it feels like it all happens in a day. If we look at the temperatures from midnight last night, you can see there were still some double digits on the board in Ontario. We were at 4 degrees here, 6 in Chatham-Kent, and then it didn't take much. By 8 a.m., everybody all the way to Kingston and Ottawa, the last to fall, because the last where the cold front went through, everyone down below zero into the negatives, and then just taking you to where we sit right now with our current temperatures. Winds have been blustery and then kind of letting off overnight tonight, but they're going to pick up again tomorrow as that system approaches. In between, we'll get a decent day out of this. Still a bit of lake effect being driven down along Lake Huron. The weather advisory because of the snowy weather to come. We are going to be in the cold sector of this system. So this is a snowfall event as opposed to the rain, freezing rain, ice pellets, and all of the mix. In some ways, that can be a good thing, but it still can be treacherous on the roadways. So we'll watch how this is going to move through the day tomorrow. We'll be in kind of variable skies, at times a little more cloud cover, but mostly we'll get sunshine in here. Then as we get into the afternoon, increasing cloudiness, that cloud deck comes in. Into the evening hours, mid-evening, we'll see the snow developing. And then through the overnight, by the morning commute, unless you're an early morning commuter, much of the falling and blowing snow, reducing visibility, will be gone, but what will be left behind are on those secondary roads or untreated surfaces, the driveway, the sidewalk, before we clear things out further. So I just want to show you the models are coming with different progressions, and this is high, I know, and I actually think we'll probably be closer to that 10 centimeters or so just because of the pace that it's going to move through quickly enough that hopefully it's not going to get up to that 10 to 15. The Niagara region, another story. They likely will. -9 overnight tonight, feeling like -16, but we get to -3, we get a bit of a breather until the evening hours, and then this is what we're dealing with into Friday. That peels away, and we'll get improving conditions, and looking at temperatures freezing, maybe a tiny bit above into the weekend, but we're not really going to see much of a warm up till later next week, it looks like.
No, we got to brace ourselves once again.
Yes, we do. Here we go.
Thanks. Thanks so much for this, Colette.
You're welcome.
Now, when we come back, it doesn't sound like it from what you just heard from Colette, but if you're looking to grow some plants from seed this year, it's already time to start prepping. We'll have more on that after the break. Stay with us. If you're a dedicated gardener who likes to grow plants from seed, now is the time to get started. Gardening expert Rob Sproul has some tips.
Growing your own food is awesome, and there's a couple ways to do it. You can go to the garden center in May and get little starter plants, or you can start it from seed. You want to start it right about now, late February, early March. Now, you want to start with a good seeding mix, and you want to make sure it's moist. So this is nice and moist, not damp. Okay, you get it nice and even. Whatever flat you use is up to you. I use an open flat. You can use little ones with cells, what have you, but you just want to make sure it's good to go for the seeds. So what do you seed first? Well, if you love chives, you want to seed them in late February. Other than that, early March is tomatoes and peppers time. Okay, you want to seed these guys 8 weeks before the last frost, like whenever that's going to be. But you take the package. Key thing on the package, by the way, is the days. Check the days when you buy the package. That's how long it takes to mature until you can start chowing down on it. There's the magic right there, everything you need. So you put them in a little row. I'm not doing it very well. And you take a little saison of soil to keep the birds off in case you have those in your house. You make sure it's moist. You put the dome on. The dome's important because it keeps the humidity in the seeds so you get better germination. As soon as you start to see the green, the dome comes off so they don't stretch out. You want to keep your seedlings moist but not damp. You want to give them a lot of light after they break the surface. A big window's great. If it's cloudy outside, it'll start to stretch out, or if it's inside too long, it'll start to stretch out. That's typically fine. Just plant it a little deeper. Try growing your own food, even if it's just a little bit this year. It's an adventure. Happy spring.
And something a little unusual to leave you with before we go, donkey racing. The animals recently raced in a town in northern Bahrain as locals and foreigners cheered them on. The donkeys were attached to wooden carts and guided by jockeys. And this low-impact sport is popular with locals, a source of entertainment for young people who breed the donkeys and train them. That is it for CBC Windsor News. Thanks so much for watching. Wishing you a great night.